Hey everyone, it's time for another X-Files episode. And tonight we're covering the second episode of the first season, Deep Throat, in which we meet the aptly named character, Deep Throat. Now this is a interesting episode for a couple of reasons. This is the first real myth arc episode that involves the government, aliens, and shenanigans. Whereas the pilot did deal with aliens, alien abduction, and whatnot, you did not have the government's direct involvement, at least. It was a small town that was being involved, but in this case, they've been called in to examine it, look into this disappearance of this guy called Budahas, whose wife basically called the FBI because he's been declared a missing person by her because the military will not let them see her husband or give him any information about her or to her about him. So they head out to Ellen's Air Force Base in Idaho to conduct the investigation. However, Mulder bumps into a mysterious man who cautions him to not check this case out, that this could be dangerous for him, which is true, and it seems he's under some sort of surveillance. His phone's been tapped and whatnot. So when Scully goes to talk to him about what this is all about, he tells her, "I'll fill you in on the way." So suffice to say, while there is a disappearance, Budahas does return about halfway through the episode, and he's suffering from some weird symptoms that are kind of vaguely described. Effectively, the agents show up, they start investigating, and then about a few scenes later, Budahas returns. The reason for this is the government doesn't want them investigating. They don't want them looking into this because there's some interesting things going on. Mulder, however, will not let things go. Even though there's no reason for him to continue searching, he continues because he needs to know the truth. Now, what happens is he bumps into, well, we're going out to basically do an Area 51 kind of look. He goes out to this spot where he can watch the UFOs or whatever from the Air Force Base, and you see these lights, and they're literally dancing in the sky. It's quite interesting. It's obviously CGI, but it still looks acceptable. Like, it's not too weird. Well, it is weird, but it's not too, like, there's no uncanny valley there. It looks fine. And wakes up Scully, and she sees them, and she doesn't know what they're talking about, and they fly off. And then a helicopter comes by, chasing out these kids, allegedly, and they help the kids escape. And one of them, played by a very young, what is it? A very young Seth Green, in one of his, not his earliest role, but a fairly early on in his career role, I believe. Anyway, he's playing a stoner kid, and they basically tell him about how they go into Ellen's Air Force Base to watch the UFOs and whatnot. Government is, and he explains to them how to sneak in. So later that night, or the next night, I suppose, Mulder sneaks in, and he gets an up close and personal of the UFO. It's a triangular craft that's been sighted all over the place, and the government kidnaps him, or doesn't kidnap him, but like arrests him, detains him, and gives him what the SCP organization would call Class like 3 amnesiacs. Suffice to say, they have a process they can do to you to erase part of your memory. And this is the reason why the pilots were coming back all damaged mentally. Because A, their bodies couldn't handle the stress, and B, the government didn't want them saying anything when they returned to their civilian lives. So they erased any of the knowledge. Unfortunately, it had side effects, like erasing things that weren't supposed to get erased, or it was an imprecise science. So unfortunately, this kind of ends on a really weird note because Mulder really ends up with his mind erased, not remembering what he had seen, and having to ask Deep Throat at the end, who meets up with him to tell him how he shouldn't have done this and he's putting himself at unnecessary risk. To which Mulder responds with, "Well, why?" And he basically says, "Because someone needs to find the truth." And they were talking back and forth and he was asking if the aliens are present on Earth, and all Deep Throat responds with is they've been here a very long time. And it's an interesting dynamic because Deep Throat is a servant of his own agenda, but he does help out Mulder sometimes. He's kind of like one of those, you can't really trust him, but at the same time he's the best you got kind of characters, because he's a member of the conspiracy, but he feels the truth needs to get out there, but he wants to mold what the truth is. It's kind of an interesting perspective. So this episode's important for a couple reasons. It establishes Mulder's kind of drive a little bit more, introduces the character of Deep Throat, who we'll have all the way through season 1, and who's a fairly important character. However, again, there's not a lot for the agents to do, and when Mulder actually gets stuff done, it kind of gets countermanded by the treatment he receives by the military. So at the end of the day, he kind of is at a zero sum for that. All said and done, this is the first, as I said at the beginning, real myth arc story. So it's definite solid episode. I give it a 7 out of 10. It's above average, but it's not a must see. But it is good. It's a solid one for the first season. So definitely check it out. All right, folks. I'll talk to you later.